Did you know there are 58 curse techniques in Jujutsu Kaisen? Most fans can barely name 10, but by the end of this video, you will know every single one of them. And the first one is Nobara's Straw Doll Technique. Nobara's curse technique allows her to control her hammer, nails, and straw dolls using the flow of her cursed energy. First is through her nails. By using her hammer, Nobara can shoot the nails towards her target. But you see, these aren't your average nails. Nobara fills these nails with her cursed energy, which causes them to remain suspended mid-air. This allows Nobara to easily nail her targets at long distances. But let me tell you that this is just Nobara's innate technique. Let me explain. Innate techniques are special abilities a Jujutsu sorcerer is born with. It is not possible to change an innate technique, but that's where extension techniques come in. While extension techniques are original abilities derived from innate techniques, in Nobara's case, her extension technique, Resonance, applies her cursed energy to her target by using her straw doll as a puppet. To use this technique, Nobara puts the body part of her target on her straw doll and hammers a nail filled with cursed energy to deal critical damage on her target. Now let's talk about the range. Well, it's a lot. Yeah, as long as she has a body part of her enemy, Nobara can hit them hard no matter how far they are. While Resonance focuses on a single target, Nobara's hairpin allows her to affect the environment around her. She uses nails infused with cursed energy as explosive projectiles. These were powerful enough to finish off Ketchizu, and even gave a special great curse like Mahito a hard time. Now, even though Jujutsu Kaisen is a series that revolves around curses and sorcerers, only 2 characters use the old school method of cursing and killing with dolls. First is Nobara, of course. The second, I want you to be patient and continue watching because we'll definitely get to her later in the video. For now, number 2, Sukuna Shrine. This technique somewhat resembles a kitchen, which is shown by the kitchen knife and meat cleaver in chapter 119. There are 3 types of attacks in this technique. The first one is Dismantle, which can instantly slice its targets from a distance. Not only can it slice non-living things, but it's also very effective against cursed objects and sorcerers. Dismantle's cutting power depends on how much cursed energy is used for the technique. Spoiler alert, at less than 10% of cursed energy output, Dismantle was only able to leave some small cuts on Yuji. But at its max power, this attack cut a huge building in half. Calling this technique fast would be an understatement because, spoiler alert, in the entire story, only 2 beings were able to dodge Dismantle. One of them is Maki Zenin, who was able to pull this feat off thanks to her cracked senses. To activate this technique, Sukuna needs to point it towards its target. But there is one exception to this, and that is when Sukuna uses his Domain Expansion Malevolent Shrine. During that time, Sukuna's Dismantle cuts everything inside the domain. Spoiler alert, now this technique has an insane extension, which is called World Cutting Dismantle. During his fight with Gojo, Sukuna enhanced Dismantle to the point where it could cut space, the entire world, and existence itself, which means that as long as something exists, our boy can cut it. And Sukuna needed this because it was only thanks to this extension that Sukuna was able to slice through Gojo's infinity. Let's now talk about Cleave, which is the second type of attack Shrine has to offer. Just like Dismantle, the cutting power of Cleave depends on the cursed energy output of the user. But unlike Dismantle, the user can change the power of this slash depending on the toughness and cursed energy of his target. This is exactly why Sukuna was able to cut through Ryu Ishigori, a sorcerer who had the highest cursed energy output ever recorded in history. To use this technique, Sukuna must make direct contact with the target, unless he's in his domain, because when he's in his domain, Sukuna doesn't even need to lift a finger. This technique also has an extension called Spiderweb. It can be activated by placing a hand on the ground, after which the technique cuts the environment in a pattern of a spiderweb. It also doesn't matter how tough the environment is, because Spiderweb adjusts its power according to its surroundings. Divine Flame is the third type of attack that Shrine offers, and is quite different from the first 2. Because while Dismantle and Cleave can be used whenever Sukuna wants, Divine Flame can only be used after Sukuna performs Dismantle and Cleave. This allows Sukuna to create and control flames for long-range attacks by launching them as an arrow. This thing packs so much damage that it not only outclassed Jogo, the cursed spirit whose whole job is to play with fire, but also burned him to death. Speaking of Jogo, let's move on to number 3, where we have Jogo's Disaster Flames. Jogo's curse technique gives him powerful fire abilities that allow him not only to create flames and lava, but also control them. Now, what makes this technique interesting is that Jogo can do all of this with his mind, which makes this technique deadly in both close and long-range fights. On top of that, Jogo can instantly create volcanoes and shoot lava blasts out of them, which makes this attack almost impossible to dodge. Now, lava is already very hot, so hot that taking 2 of these blasts head-on cooked Naobito Zenin so bad that he almost died. But what if you want more heat? Well, Jogo's curse technique has you covered, because Jogo can make his flames so hot that they change their color from red to purple. Combine that power with Jogo's huge tank of cursed energy, and you get enough fire to fill up an entire building in an instant. Along with this insane firepower, Jogo has ember insects. These insects, which are extensions of Jogo's technique, come out from the volcano hole on top of his head. Just like your normal mosquitoes, these insects have a very annoying sound. They use this sound to blow them up and cause a huge explosion. But what if you want an explosion so large that it completely destroys a city? A maximum technique is what happens when a sorcerer pushes their extension technique to the maximum level. It is the most supreme art they can wield, second only to a domain expansion. And to let you know how big of a deal it is, only 3 people in Jujutsu world can use maximum technique. In Jogo's case, maximum technique lets him create a huge meteor that can easily destroy a whole city. Some of you might be thinking that this attack is useless since it didn't do anything to Sukuna, which is true, but Sukuna himself said that if he didn't dodge that attack, it would have injured him. Number 4. Nanami's ratio technique. It literally ratios his opponent. It divides Nanami's target into 10 lines and automatically creates a weak spot at the ratio point of 7:3. Nanami can create these lines at any part he wants, and after that he swings his sword at those points. But if Nanami's fighting a strong opponent, it'll critically damage them, while it is wrapped in cloth. Now, this isn't only limited to body parts, because thanks to the extension technique Collapse, Nanami can even create a weak point in his environment to completely destroy it. Number 5 is a curse technique used by not 1, but 2 different characters, Mai Zenin and Yorozu. It's known as the construction technique. Let's talk about Mai's construction first. To be honest, it's not efficient, because to create something from nothing, this technique uses most of Mai's cursed energy. And the result? A single bullet, and that too can only be created once per day, which Mai uses in a revolver to make her opponents think that she's out of bullets, when she's actually not. I know it sounds useless because, for the most part, it is, but Mai did create a monster of a weapon with her curse technique. Now, the next portion is basically a spoiler, so you should skip to number 6. Remember Toji's split soul katana, the blade that ignores all physical resistances and cuts straight through to the soul itself? Because Mai Zenin created the exact copy of that sword and gave it to her sister Maki, but this came at the cost of her life, because the moment she gave birth to that monster, she died. But unlike Mai, Yorozu can recreate anything she recognizes as long as it is not a special grade curse spirit, and it doesn't cost Yorozu her life because she has lots of cursed energy in reserve, which means that, unlike Mai, Yorozu can create different types of objects without any problem. To give you a few examples, Yorozu can create 2 pairs of insect-like wings on her back to fly at high speeds, which is very rare in the Jujutsu world, as there are only 3 more sorcerers who can do that, which we'll discuss later in the video. Along with that, she can also create a liquid metal, which she uses as her main weapon. And because it's a liquid metal, Yorozu can change its shape however she wants, and she actually uses it in the most unique ways possible. Yorozu used this liquid metal to create an insect armor. But why an insect, you ask? Because she believed that forming a body modeled after insects was the most efficient and effective way to use her technique. This armor is so strong that it was able to tank multiple attacks from Megumi's piercing eye. blocks. Combine that with the fact that Yorotsu can control the liquid outside her armor, and she becomes a capable fighter at mid-range. However, that's not all, because thanks to her great control over liquid metal, Yorotsu made an object that's impossible to create under normal circumstances. I'm talking about the perfect sphere. The reason it's impossible to create is because at the atomic level, every surface has bumps and rough spots on it. Now, how is a sphere useful? Well, it is because a true sphere has no contact area, which means it can create infinite pressure. In English, it basically means it is a perfect ball that crushes Yorotsu's opponents with its infinite pressure. However, if you don't like insects, then let's talk about dolls, because number 6 is Mimoko's curse technique. Just like Nobara, Mimoko uses the classic method of cursing her opponent through a doll. But unlike Nobara, she doesn't need a body part to make it work. Whatever she does to the doll directly reflects onto her target. With that discussed, we now have 52 more techniques to go. Let's move on to number 7, where we have Hanami's disaster plans. Hanami's curse technique allows them to bring the illusion of cursed plans into reality. While it looks like Hanami is controlling normal plants using their cursed energy, she's actually creating cursed plants, which lets Hanami quickly erase them from reality as quickly as they were created. Because of this technique, Hanami can create lots of things. For example, she can create roots to hit her opponents. This attack has a long range, but it gets slow the further you go. However, by limiting the reach and number of roots, Hanami can increase the speed and power of the roots. Hanami can also create wooden balls, which can shoot 1 or 2 sharp branches that Hanami uses to stab her opponents. Hanami can also use this wooden ball to float in mid-air. There are also cursed buds, which Hanami launches towards her opponents. These cursed buds attach themselves to Hanami's opponents and absorb their cursed energy. Using your cursed energy after this thing gets attached is basically suicide, because the more cursed energy the sorcerer uses, the deeper it plants its roots into them. Now, all of these extensions of disaster plans have something in common. They look dangerous. What I mean is that the moment Hanami's opponents see these techniques, they instantly go on defense. However, Hanami's flower field is actually the opposite. Using his powers, Hanami can create a circle of flowers around her opponents, which distracts them with a curse. This even made Gojo let his guard down and appreciate the beautiful flower garden. I mean, what else would you do? Start destroying those flowers like a monster? Now, I know that this technique is only good for distracting your opponent, but in a fight where even a 1/10 of a second matters, that's all you need. But if you want a technique that not only distracts your opponent, but can also finish them off, then number 8, Aoi Todo's Boogie Wgie. Todo's curse technique allows him to change the positions of anyone or anything as long as that thing has a certain amount of cursed energy. Activating this technique is quite simple. You just have to clap your hands. Now, it doesn't have to be both of your hands, as during his fight with Mahito, Todo activated his technique just fine by clapping his hand with Mahito's hand. Now, I know this technique sounds simple, but sometimes simple is all you need. Don't believe me? Then let me tell you that not only did this technique completely bamboozle Hanami, giving Todo and Yuji enough time to punish Hanami with their bone-breaking punches, but also gave a very rough time to Mahito, who, despite knowing how it works, found it very annoying. One more thing that makes this technique a nightmare for Todo's enemies is the fact that just because Todo clapped his hands, it doesn't mean that he's activating his technique. The small detail gives you so many attack options that you need an IQ of 530,000 to even keep track of it, let alone use it in the battle. And guess what? Our boy has that IQ. To give you an idea of how overpowered this technique is, even after losing his hand, Todo made his presence known on the battlefield. In chapter 132, he fooled Mahito into believing that the clapping of hands was just a way to connect with the soul. Mahito took the bait and quickly looked behind to react to that switch. However, no one was there. Now, what's the punishment for taking your eyes off Yuji for a second? That's right, a fight-ending black flash that also ends your whole career. Spoiler alert, We all thought that because Toto lost his hand, he's basically useless now, but after laying low for more than 120 chapters, Toto made a comeback with a vibra slap on his left hand. What it did was change the activation of Boogie Wgie from a clap to striking the vibra slap. I know this sounds ridiculous, but this actually allowed Toto to change positions 50 times per second. However, Toto took it to the next level and made a binding vow that limits the number of swaps he can make, which in return allowed Toto to exchange multiple targets. This was so effective that it even confused Sukuna, the king of curses. Now, even though vibra slap is a musical instrument, it doesn't have that oomph we all want. So for that, we move on to number 9, where we have Yoshinobu's sound amplifier. You might think that since Yoshinobu's got one foot in the grave, he's just some boring old dude who's lost the oomph. But nah, my guy literally plays rock music. Yoshinobu's technique uses his body as a sound amplification device and boosts the sounds he plays on his electric guitar. He then launches these melodies in strong waves of cursed energy that he uses to hit his opponents. Since we are already discussing the old dude, let us move to number 10, where we have Master Tengen's Immortality. This curse technique looks simple, right? I mean, it grants Master Tengen immortality. What else is there to explain about that? Well, there are a few details. While it might give Master Tengen eternal life, it does not stop the aging process, which means he will continue to get old. And once Tengen reaches a certain age, their curse technique begins to force a change by triggering evolution. When that process begins, Tengen can no longer remain human and would have to ascend to a higher state of being. While that sounds cool, it is actually scary, because once Master Tengen reaches that level, he won't be Master Tengen anymore. To prevent that from happening, since this guy is actually supporting all the barriers around the Jujutsu schools, Master Tengen needs to be combined with the Star Plasma Vessel. Star Plasma Vessels are young women who possess the requirements to refresh Master Tengen's immortality by merging with him. There are 2 Star Vessels shown in the series. One of them is Rika Amanai, who was killed by Toji Fushiguro, and as for the second one, we'll discuss her later in the video. Now, immortality sounds cool, but believe me, cloning is better. So let's talk about cloning technique at number 11. We don't know the name of the user, but this technique was so powerful that even Gojo Satoru praised it. This technique allows its user to create clones. These clones can cover a wide area, which allows them to gather information. Although the user can only create up to 4 clones, what makes this technique powerful is the fact that the user can change places with a clone anytime he wants to avoid incoming danger. Next at number 12, we have Momo's tool manipulation. Momo is basically the witch of Jujutsu Kaisen, because her curse technique allows her to freely control her broom with her mind. And yes, she can fly with her broom, which basically makes her one of the 4 sorcerers that can fly. Momo basically uses this ability to scout her enemies, but this broom also has a lamp. This lamp allows Momo to silently create a signal above her target to inform her teammates where to attack. And thanks to her extension technique, she can create a cursed energy wind blade to attack her opponents. She does it by rubbing the brush end of her broom with the ground and sends it straight towards her enemy. Since we're on the topic of flying, let's discuss the 2 remaining sorcerers who can fly. But that would be a spoiler for anime only, so you've been warned. At number 13, we have Hanyu's curse technique. Hanyu's curse technique is very strange. She can change her hair into the shape of a jet plane. And if you're wondering if this jet plane has boosters, the answer is yes. These boosters are powerful enough to propel Hanyu at such high speeds that she can drive someone straight through a building. That's because the majority of Hanyu's cursed energy is concentrated in her head region. Now, this does leave the rest of her body defenseless, to the point that even a small cursed energy infused rock can defeat her. For those who like helicopters, don't worry, because next we have Haba's curse technique at number 14. Similar to Hanyu, Haba can change his hair into a propeller with 4 blades. By activating these propellers, Haba is able to fly or stay in the air just like a helicopter. Along with that, he not only can freely adjust the angle, length, and rotational speed of his propeller, but can also increase its toughness and rotational speed. But in case you like puppets, then you would love Muta's puppet manipulation at number 15. Kokichi Muta's puppet manipulation allows him to freely control numerous cursed corpse puppets over large distances. How large? Because of heavenly restriction, which is the reason behind his poor physical state. Muta is able to control puppets all across Japan. Muta has 3 main types of puppets. First is his signature puppet, Ultimate Mechamaru. This thing is basically an AI in one package. There's a sword option that causes different blades and spikes to come out of his forearm, which Ultimate Mechamaru can either use to attack its opponent or rotate to create a drill effect. Mechamaru's elbows also have jets installed in them, which he uses to get a quick burst of speed. Mechamaru also combines this boost with his drill that can easily destroy a large tree. Along with that, Mechamaru has 3 types of long-range attacks. First is Ultra Cannon, which allows Mechamaru to shoot a concentrated beam of cursed energy from his palm. Then there's Mode Albatross. This basically shifts Mechamaru into offensive mode and reveals a cannon from his mouth. While Mechamaru is in this mode, he can unleash huge reserves of cursed energy to fuel its ultimate cannon. Now, Ultimate Cannon is basically Mechamaru's finisher move. It's a massive beam of cursed energy that Mechamaru can only shoot while he's in Mode Albatross. However, it has a drawback. Because this technique uses huge amounts of cursed energy, Mechamaru can't use it consecutively. And if this thing misses its target, then Mechamaru would have to fight with very low cursed energy levels. It might seem like Mechamaru is a glass cannon, but he has something for defense as well. While he's using Sword Cannon, Mechamaru can create several spikes on his forearms, which he can then use to defend against his opponents. The second puppet we have is an upgraded version of Ultimate Mechamaru, known as Mode Absolute. It's a giant armored puppet that Muta can pilot all by himself. This thing is insane because it shoots special grade levels of cursed energy that Muta was storing up his whole life. This robot has 3 types of attack, and their strength depends on the years of cursed energy they release. We have Ultra Cannon that uses 1 year's worth of cursed energy and can easily destroy an iron bridge. Miracle Cannon uses 2 years worth of cursed energy that can blow up a good part of the lake. Then there's Pigeon Viola that uses 5 years worth of cursed energy. This move shoots 5 powerful bullets that not only have insane destructive power, but can also chase their target. The third puppet we have is a small coin-sized communication puppet that Muta created to help his friends and spy on the enemies. This thing ran on remains of Muta's cursed energy, and eventually deactivated when it ran out of that. Now let's talk about someone who controls birds, and for that, we have Mei's Blackbird Manipulation at number 16. Mei's cursed technique is very simple. It allows Mei to fill crows with cursed energy and control them however she likes. She can also share vision with these crows, which allows her to spy over large distances. You might be thinking that this technique is only good for spying, and you won't be entirely wrong, because Mei also thought the same, but thanks to the extension technique Bird Strike, Mei gained a great offensive boost. To use this technique, Mei basically forces the poor crow to commit suicide, and the sacrifice is very necessary. But thanks to this sacrifice, Mei can remove the cursed energy limit of the crow, which makes them a powerful missile that Mei fires at her enemies. To give you an idea of how strong this strike is, Mei was able to one-shot a special grade cursed spirit with this technique. Now keep in mind that Bird Strike couldn't one-shot the likes of Gojo, Gito, and Sukuna, but that's only because it didn't hit them. Mei believes that her Bird Strike is more than capable of critically damaging these 3 sorcerers, which is exactly the reason they avoid getting hit by it. But even kids can control things like puppets and birds. Real men control the very soul of the human body. And to find out how they do that, let's talk about Mahito's Idol Transfiguration at number 17. Mahito's Idol Transfiguration grants him the power to change the shape of souls. This also lets him change his shape or the shape of anyone he touches, but how does changing the shape of the soul change the shape of the body? You see, in Jujutsu Kaisen, the shape of the body depends on the shape of the soul, which means that the moment you change the soul, the body also changes its shape. The only way to stop Mahito from playing with your soul is by protecting it with your cursed energy. If you don't do that, then you'd either become a transfigured human like Junpei or share the same fate as Nanami. Changing the shape of your enemy's soul makes sense, but why would Mahito change the shape of his own soul? Well, for starters, to heal himself. Yup, Mahito can reform the shape of his own soul and heal his injuries. Along with that, Mahito can change his body however he wants. And I mean that literally, because this guy doesn't need Red Bull to grow wings, he can grow better wings thanks to his cursed technique. This sounds crazy, right? Well, we haven't even discussed the extensions of this technique technique. The first is soul multiplicity. Just like the name suggests, Mahito combines 2 or more souls together, which causes a reaction. This reaction happens because the souls refuse to combine into one soul. Mahito uses this reaction to activate his next extension technique, Body Repel. What Mahito does is that he increases the energy of the souls, which when combined with the reaction caused by soul multiplicity, leads to a huge attack of transfigured bodies that can be launched at the target. Now I know I said that different souls refuse to fuse, but there's an exception. Souls which have a weak rejection to fusion come together to form a transfigured human that can attack its opponents. These things, which are called polymorphic soul isomer, are so strong that they send Todo flying into the air. And if that wasn't enough already, Mahito literally became a predator after transforming into instant spirit body of distorted killing. After realizing the true essence of his soul, Mahito became a predator. He became so tough that he tanked Yuji's heavy punches as if they were nothing. Wanna know how strong this thing is? 200% more powerful than Mahito's original state. But it seems like even that 200% increase of power didn't satisfy Mahito, so he made a binding vow to take his killing potential to the next level. And to learn more about how he did that, you can check our video on binding vows, where I explain Mahito's binding vow in detail. Since we're talking about manipulators, let's talk about the best manipulator in the game. Because, at number 18, we have Kenjaku's Curse Technique. Kenjaku's innate technique has the ability to change the whole Jujutsu world. Using his Curse Technique, Kenjaku can take over the body of any person by transplanting his brain into them. As a result, he gains access to the host's memories. Since Curse Techniques are also stored in the front part of the brain, Kenjaku is also able to use them. Along with that, Kenjaku even gains access to the curse energy of the user. And this thing right there makes this technique insanely foolproof, because even with his 6 eyes, Gojo wasn't able to find the true identity of Kenjaku. It's thanks to this cheat code of a technique that Kenjaku was able to live more than 1,000 years, jumping from one body to another. And now the craziest part, even after Kenjaku shifts to a new body, he still has access to the curse techniques of his former host. However, storing lots of curse techniques is a bad idea since it would overload Kenjaku's brain. This leaves us with 40 more techniques, but before we move on to the next one, spoiler alert for anime onlys. At number 19, we have Yuki Star Rage. Just like Riko, Yuki is a star plasma, but unlike Riko, she's a Jujutsu sorcerer, whose curse technique lets her gain weight without getting fat. Yup, Yuki's Star Rage lets her add virtual mass to herself and her Shikigami, Garuda. Now, this added weight doesn't slow Yuki down, however, it also doesn't increase her toughness. Then what does it do? It lets Yuki hit her opponents like a truck, without her turning into a truck. Since she can also do the same to Garuda, Yuki can use it as a big bonk weapon to crush her enemies. But this technique is even crazier than this, because Yuki can become a black hole with this technique. You know how I said adding virtual mass doesn't actually make her heavier? Well, there's an exception to that. It doesn't affect Yuki until a certain point, but if Yuki continues to increase loads of mass, she will condense her body into a black hole with extreme density and gravity. The next technique is also a spoiler, but if you still want to know how to counter black hole, then we need to move on to number 20, where we have Kaori's Antigravity System. This technique completely cancels gravity when it is activated. But before we talk about that, let's talk about the reversal of this technique. This reversal was used by Kenjaku, who was able to use this technique after taking control of Kaori's body. Reversal or reverse curse technique is a very special type of curse technique. What it does is basically takes cursed energy, which is basically negative energy, and reverses it into positive energy. This technique is mainly used to heal human bodies, but because of the nature of the anti-gravity system, Kenjaku uses it differently. What the reversal of this technique did was allow Kenjaku to immensely increase the gravity in a 2 to 3 meter radius around him for approximately 6 seconds. It literally made Choso and Yuki lick the ground. Now back to the intended use of this technique. As I mentioned, it completely cancels gravity after it's activated, but how did Kenjaku use it in a fight? Remember the black hole Yuki created? Kenjaku used the anti-gravity system to completely cancel the immense gravity of the black hole. And if he hadn't done that, then Jujutsu Kaisen would have ended right there. I think it's time we talk about the last host of Kenjaku, number 21, where we have Geto's Cursed Spirit Manipulation. Suguru Geto's Cursed Technique allows him to completely control the cursed spirits he won against, and if there is at least a 2-level difference between the cursed spirit and Geto, then Geto can absorb it without any conditions. However, if there's a cursed spirit that has a master, then Geto must kill its master before he even tries to absorb it. The defeated cursed spirits are then absorbed into small black orbs, which Geto must swallow in order to use the cursed spirit. But what happens when you use all your stored cursed spirits at once? Well, a disaster. And that is exactly the case with Geto's maximum technique, Uzumaki. It combines all the cursed spirits Geto has absorbed into one super condensed cursed energy attack. Spoiler alert, this attack was so strong that when used by Kenjaku, not only did it leave a huge hole in the ground, but its mini version was more than enough to blast Yuki Tsukumo's upper body and create a hole in her lower torso. And Kenjaku's deeds don't stop there, because we have yet to talk about the death wombs he created. To do that, let's move on to number 22, to discuss Eso and Kichizu's Rot Technique. Eso and Kichizu's Rot Technique allows them to control their blood. This blood is very toxic and has high corrosive properties. It is so corrosive that it can burn skin the moment it comes in contact with it, and can eat away a solid rock as if it were paper. Although both of them have the same cursed technique, Kichizu's blood is of lower quality than Eso's. But quality doesn't matter here, because the moment Eso and Kichizu's blood hit their opponent, it's game over for them. Why? Because of the decay. This extension of Rot Technique creates a flower-like pattern on the target's skin. The moment that pattern appears, decay will start spreading through the whole body. And in a few hours, the only thing that'd remain on the battlefield would be the bones of the enemy. But that's not all, because Eso also has a maximum technique. This technique allows Eso to shape his blood into large wasp-like wings. Eso can use these wings to move quickly in the air, but can also shoot sharp lines of blood towards his enemies. Let's talk a bit about Seance techniques, and for that we have Ino's Beast Summon at number 23. Seance is basically when you contact spirits, otherworldly creatures, or another person. It can also enable one to use their abilities. In Ino's case, his technique allows him to become a spiritual medium when he hides his face with a mask. After becoming the spiritual medium, Ino can use his curse energy to call out his 4 auspicious beasts when he shouts their name. The first auspicious beast is Kaichi. It is a flying horn that can be controlled through his mind. This thing is coated in cursed energy, which means it can be fired as a projectile to make a hole in its enemies. And dodging this horn won't do you any good, because this thing is a homing missile that won't stop until it hits its target. At number 2, we have Reiki. It's a defensive technique that transforms Ino's cursed energy into water that covers Ino's body like a cushion. This thing isn't only built for defense, since by covering his feet completely with Reiki's water, Ino can also increase his mobility. The next 2 beasts are spoilers, so anime-onlys can skip to the next technique. The third auspicious beast we have is Kirin. This thing basically causes brain doping and completely removes Ino's sense of pain. However, as with all doping methods, there's a drawback. It drains Ino's stamina so badly that after using this technique, Ino is unable to move for some time. The last auspicious beast we have is Ryu, which means dragon in Japanese. Ryu's whole job is to crash straight into its target, but unlike other beasts, Ryu will disappear after it receives a good amount of damage. At number 24, Ogami's Seance Technique. Just like Ino, Ogami also has a Seance Technique, but this Seance Technique is different from Ino's technique. Ogami's Curse Technique allows her to summon the body or soul information from a dead person by using their corpse. After doing that, Ogami can simply use that information to either shapeshift herself or whoever she wants into that person. Number 25, where we have Awasaka's Inverse. Awasaka's Curse Technique is very annoying because when this technique is activated, his opponent's strong attack becomes weaker, while weak attacks become stronger. However, there is a minimum and maximum limit for this technique. Otherwise, something as weak as air resistance would end this old man's life. Next, at number 26, we have Shigemo's Miracles. And I am being somewhat literal here. Shigemo's Curse Technique allows him to store small miracles he experiences in everyday life. These miracles are then erased from his memory. However, they're shown by lines under his eyes. Now, how does storing small miracles help him? It actually saves his life. When Shigemo's life is in danger, these miracles literally change his luck, which allows him to survive deadly attacks. When a miracle is released, the lines under his eyes lose their color. However, However, there is a small problem. Because these small miracles get erased from his memory, Shigemo has not a single clue about his technique, which eventually led to his death because he met Sukuna with zero luck in his back. From this, we learn that always relying on luck and miracles isn't a good thing, which is why one should have abilities that can stop their injuries from getting worse. And guess what? We have just the curse technique for that, because at number 27, we have Arata's curse technique. By applying his curse technique on an injury, Arata can basically stop it from getting worse. Even though this technique cannot heal wounds, it can stop bleeding and dull pain, which sometimes is more than enough to save lives. However, this only applies to injuries that one has suffered before Arata uses his technique. As for wounds suffered after that, this technique can't do anything about them. But if you can't do that, then make sure you have some ice lying around to put on injuries. Speaking of ice, let's move to number 28, where we have Urame's ice formation. Urame's curse technique allows her to lower the temperature around her to extreme levels, which then enables Urame to produce ice and frost however she wants. Urame uses this to send a cloud of freezing mist at her opponent, and when this mist covers her opponent, it quickly hardens into thick layers of ice that freezes her opponent. Urame can also create a large amount of ice that sends towards her opponent. I would suggest not making the mistake of touching it, because this thing can instantly freeze you. And it doesn't stop here, because after sending this hell towards her opponent, Urame drops several large icicles upon their opponents to completely finish them off. And with that, we have only 30 more techniques to talk about. However, the next part is a spoiler. At number 29, where we have Ogi's Blazing Courage. Ogi's curse technique allows him to create flames and channel them through his weapon to create a flaming sword. And he doesn't need a full sword to do that, because Blazing Courage can completely replace a broken blade. Ogi can also take this one step further by creating flames that completely circle him, while also fiercely coating his blade. Now let's discuss water, and to do that we have Dagon's Disaster Tide at number 30. Dagon's curse technique makes him a walking water-based natural disaster. He can produce and control massive waves of water using only his cursed energy. Yeah, this guy doesn't need your tap water. He can make a whole sea all by himself. And that wasn't even his full form yet, because in his full form, Dagon could create huge waves just from his fingertip. But this madness doesn't even compare to the extension of this technique, Death Swarm. Just as the name suggests, Dagon sends an endless swarm of Shikigami. This at first doesn't sound that bad, but if we combine this with the can't miss effect of Dagon's domain expansion, then it's basically disaster. What's interesting about this technique is the fact that Dagon can divide the effectiveness of this technique among his opponents. Now before we move on to techniques that would spoil anime-onlys, let's talk about Nanako's technique at number 31. While the Jujutsu world is full of techniques that make use of Shikigami, natural disasters, and other dangerous stuff, Nanako's technique is as simple as taking a photo, and I mean that literally. Nanako's curse technique allows her to control anything that she captures using her cell phone camera. She once used it on herself to change location, but the process quickly tired her. Now, anime-onlys, let's meet you at technique number 53, and as for manga readers, let's move on to, at number 32, Chojuro's Earth Manipulation. Just as the name suggests, Chojuro's technique allows him to control Earth. He not only can create gigantic stone hands by touching the ground, but the ground where he fought Maki was also made by him. Next, at number 33, we have Ranta's Paralyzing Gaze. You ever see someone and just get stunned by how beautiful they are? Well, Ranta's technique is that someone, minus the beautiful part. Ranta's technique can immobilize anyone that he sets his eyes on. This technique manifests a very large pair of eyes that creates the aura, which restricts Ranta's target. But there's a side effect. As long as Ranta stops his enemy, it puts a great burden on his eyes. And if Ranta's target is strong enough to break his paralysis, then there's only pain for poor Ranta. During his fight with Maki, Maki was able to break through his paralysis, which caused Ranta's eyes to bleed like a fountain. At number 34, Junichi's Missile Fists. Unlike other members of the Hei, which is a group of the strongest fighters within the Zenin clan, Junichi's curse technique is the most destructive. This technique lets Junichi create many huge fists, but that's not it, because these fists get boosted by cursed energy, which basically makes them like a missile, that it can easily crush a building. We have talked about the members of the Hei, so now let's talk about Reggie Star's group. For that, we have Chizuru Hari's curse technique at number 35. This technique looks cool on paper, but it wasn't shown how it affects its target. What we do know is that this technique allows Chizuru to turn his fingers into dark claws. But before we could see what these claws do, Megumi killed him. So moving on to number 36, we have Remy's technique. We've seen hair turning into jet planes or being used as helicopters, but how about hair becoming a scorpion tail? Remy's curse technique allows her to control her scorpion tail-like hair to attack her enemies. It might sound cool, but the damage is mid to be honest, since even after getting attacked at point-blank range, Megumi only got a mild irritation. But don't worry, Iori's explosive flesh at number 37 has you covered. Iori Hazanoki's innate technique allows him to use his body parts as bombs. The body parts he commonly uses are eyes and teeth, which he can throw as projectiles to explode whenever he wants. But if you don't want to use your body parts, then you can also use your contacts or receipts. Don't believe me? Then let's talk about Regi's contractual recreation at number 38. This technique has lots of uses, because by burning a contract with his curse energy, Regi can create whatever was written on that contract into existence. And this is not limited to physical objects, because this guy can even recreate the effects of spa treatments to get rid of all of his exhaustion from the fight. What's more is that recreated items can also be given orders like Shikigami. However, unlike Shikigami, they disappear after completing that order. But I bet that even Regi's curse technique won't be able to produce comedy like our next sorcerer, because at number 39 we have Fumihiko's comedian. Fumihiko basically turns his jokes into reality. If he thinks of something that he is certain will be funny, it becomes real, and the fun part, he doesn't even have to say that thing out loud. Just believing it's funny would do the job. If Fumihiko thinks that deflecting an attack with a sauce is funny, then not only would his whole body instantly get sauced, but he would even deflect the attack. This means that as long as he finds it funny, he can cancel or dodge attacks, and this very fact right here makes this technique strong enough to even oppose Gojo. But remember that to keep this technique active, Fumihiko must have the confidence in his ability to be funny, because if he loses confidence, he won't be able to use his curse technique, which is exactly what happened in his fight with Kenjaku, where Kenjaku made Fumihiko doubt his own talent as a comedian. If comedy is this strong in Jujutsu Kaisen, then what about the power of love? To find out about that, let's move on to next at number 40, we have Kirara's Love Rendezvous. Kirara's Love Rendezvous is quite complex for someone who faces it for the first time, but don't worry, I'll make it simple for you. Kirara's curse technique distributes 5 stars with a pattern of the Southern Cross constellation to target and mark cursed energy. If someone who is marked with 1 star wants to approach another star, then he must follow a set order. This order is based on the Southern Cross constellation and starts from Imai, a Crux, Mimosa, Ginon with Gakrux at the very last. So if you're marked with a Mimosa star, you can only move toward Ginon. You aren't allowed to skip Ginon and go to Gakrux. Along with that, you also can't go back to Akrux or Imai. Kirara uses this technique efficiently to not only make it hard for enemies to get close, but also trap them in certain places. The reason this technique is based on love is that people or objects that have the same stars will always attract each other. And now we are left with only 18 techniques. So moving on to number 41, where we have Hakari's Private Pure Love Train. This technique is mainly tied to Hakari's domain expansion, Idle Death Gamble, which creates an environment that resembles a train station. This train station and the trains in the domains are from Hakari's favorite anime, Private Pure Love Train. And although this technique is usually used with a domain, Hakari can still summon the shutter doors of the train outside of his domain. Hakari can use these shutters to attack or crush his opponents by closing these doors. Moving on to number 42, where we have Hiromi Higurama's Curse Technique. While other sorcerers worry about which curse tool to get, Higurama is content with the one that came with his innate technique. This technique also gave him the Shikigami called Judgment, and he also got a domain in which he acts as the symbol of justice. The Judgment is a large Shikigami with a black body. It has 2 arms, both of which hold a scale, and its eyes are closed with 3 stitches. This represents blind justice, the justice that treats everyone equally under the law, without any kind of favoritism. Just like Hakari, Higurama's technique is also mainly used in his domain expansion, and it places him in a one-on-one trial scenario where he can prosecute his enemy by earning a guilty sentence from Judgment. If you somehow escape from this, then don't worry, Angel will punish you for your crimes. How? With the help of the Angel's Extinguishment we have at number 43. Now this technique is very OP. As the name literally says, it allows Angel to cancel and eliminate any and all curses, barriers, seals, cursed objects. Nothing stands in front of this technique. Even special grade cursed objects like Prison Realm, the very thing that sealed the mighty Gojo, can be cooked by extinguishment. And because this technique can destroy cursed objects, it can even deal with incarnations. However, there's a small problem. Because the cursed object and vessel are fused together, the players who are possessed by these cursed objects will also die along with the object, which means if used on Sukuna, it will also kill our boy Yuji. The extension of this technique, Jacob's Ladder, summons a trumpet in Angel's hands. This trumpet is made of light and has 4 wings. Angel then recites a brief spell, which causes a magic circle to appear in the sky. All Angel has to do after that is blow the trumpet, which will cause a pillar of light to fall upon her target, and that pillar of light from the sky is more than enough to eliminate any curse under it, provided Angel doesn't stop her technique midway. Speaking of the sky, let's move on to number 44, where we have Takako Udo's Sky Manipulation. Takako's technique's gotta be the most sick technique in Jujutsu Kaisen. This girl can literally control the sky as if she's wrapping a piece of cloth. This also lets her control space, which allows her to create distortions. These distortions or deformations are similar to the ones created by different lenses. To give you an example, it's similar to how a fisheye lens would give you an image like this. Thanks to this, she doesn't need to buy clothes, since she can use this deformation to cover her body. This also allows her to float in the air, and even allows her to defend against the enemy's attack by deforming the shape of their attacks. And if she bends the space around her, Takako can even send her enemy's attack back to them. This does make sky manipulation more like a defensive technique, but that's why we have its extension, Thin Icebreaker. Takako doesn't hit her opponent directly, which sounds very strange, but that's how this technique works. Takako hits the surface of the sky surrounding her opponent. This causes the surface to break like thin ice, while also smacking her opponent along with it. Now let's talk about the guy whose attack got deflected by Takako Udo. At number 45, we have Ryu's Curse Energy Discharge. Ryu's curse technique is quite straightforward. It lets him fire direct blasts of curse energy like a cannon, which he shoots from his cannon-shaped hair. The strength of these blasts depends on how much they have been charged. Moreover, these blasts can also take on different forms. For example, Ryu not only can shoot in one straight line, but can also shoot bursts of curse energy blasts to overpower the enemy. But both of these attacks are nothing compared to Ryu's signature attack. The Granite Blast is the most powerful and straightforward use of curse energy discharge. It is a highly concentrated beam of curse energy, which has such a wide range of attack that it destroyed several blocks of Sendai City in one go. Want to know about the guy who overpowered both of these techniques? Because at number 46, we have Yuta's Curse Technique. Yuta is that guy in your class who copies his friend's assignment down to the very name of his friend, and this habit of his also transferred to his curse technique. Yuta's copy technique allows him to replicate the innate techniques of sorcerers whose body parts have been consumed by Rika. The amount of type of body parts Rika needs to eat depends on how powerful the technique is and how many times Yuta wants to use it, which means if Yuta wants to use a very strong technique, then he must feed Rika the body part that's most important to the sorcerer. After consuming the body part, the curse technique can only be used when Yuta is connected to Rika through his ring. Moreover, the curse techniques Yuta uses are stored within Rika, and that's very important, because remember what I told you when explaining Kenjaku's curse technique? Yup, the overload. If you store lots of curse techniques, it'll overload your brain. Now to talk about the bug that got squashed by Yuta, let's move on to number 47, where we have Kuroroshi's Earthen Insect Trance. Kuroroshi's curse technique allows him to create and control endless swarms of real cockroaches that are reinforced by Kuroroshi's curse energy. Now, these cockroaches aren't your normal cockroaches, and you better wish they're not, because these things can eat an adult human in seconds, and these swarms of cockroaches only continue to increase, thanks to parthenogenesis. This process, in simple terms, allows Kuroroshi to do two things. First, it allows it to produce even more cockroaches. The second thing it does is it allows Kuroroshi to produce its child that is completely identical to its parent. But to make sure the original Kuroroshi preserves his existence, the cursed energy from the parent Kuroroshi is passed on to its child when the parent dies. And if you think that's enough about cockroaches, then no, because we have yet to discuss Kuroroshi's extension Ancient Technique, Earthen Insect Trance. This technique summons 2 flying insect Shikigami that carry large pouches that are filled with a liquid substance. Now, even though those insects look disgusting, I wouldn't recommend killing them, because doing so will release the liquid that will mess up your vision. I think that's enough about insects for today, so for a change, let's move on to number 48, where we have Charles G. Warstaff. You know how they say, the pen is mightier than the sword? Yeah, so Charles took that a little literally, because his curse technique lets him summon a spear-type curse tool. Now I say spear-type, because this thing has a drawing pen tip at the end of it. Now that doesn't mean it's only good for drawing, because this thing has a special function. This curse tool allows Charles to see into the future of someone he cuts with it. To do that, Charles must fulfill the condition for ink, which he can do so by extracting his opponent's blood into the pen's tip. After that, Charles can use the ink to mark his opponents with a manga panel. This manga panel lets Charles see what's happening at the last panel of a page, the same way a reader might look at the bottom left panel before actually reading it. When this technique starts, Charles can only see 1 second into the future, but as he fills his pen with more ink, Charles is able to see further into the future. And with that, we are down to our last 10 techniques. Number 49, we have Utahime's Solo Forbidden Area. No, it's not Area 51, it's something even better than that, because this technique creates a zone around Utahime, which temporarily increases the cursed energy of one sorcerer Utahime wants. She can also use this technique to increase her cursed energy, and if she turns this technique into a ritual by using spells, hand signs, along with dance and music, then Utahime can increase the effect of this technique to 120%. It is because of this boost that Gojo was able to unleash his technique at 200% output. Speaking of dance and music, let's move on to number 50, where we have Miguel's Prayer Song. This lets Miguel defeat curses by breakdancing, and no, I am not joking, because to activate this technique, Miguel has to dance to a certain beat, which has been engraved into Miguel's body. By maintaining this beat, Miguel not only can keep the curses away from himself, but also buff himself at the same time. This buff made him so strong that not only did he tank Sukuna's punches, but also landed many powerful blows at him. Moving on to number 51, we have LaRue's Heart Catch. As the name suggests, this technique does catch your heart, but that comes later, because what the innate technique does is create a big virtual hand that can float in air to grab its target, and after it grabs the target, LaRue can do anything he wants with his enemy. He can then either throw them on the ground or crush them against an obstacle, but is it possible to hit or destroy that hand? Yes, you can do that, and when that happens, LaRue will receive 1/10 of the damage. However, destroying the hand doesn't mean it's the end, because LaRue can create it multiple times. What if your opponent runs after you have grabbed them physically? Well, you can grab their heart, but not literally. Sorry guys, we don't get that in Jujutsu Kaisen. What we do get is this technique that forces the attention of your opponent. The target is forced to focus towards LaRue, giving allies more than enough time to deal critical blows. But what do you do if you don't feel those love sparks? You create them. And if you want to know how to do that, then let's move on to number 52, where we have Kashimo's Mythical Beast Amber. Kashimo's Mythical Beast Amber basically turns him into an electric man, which lets him create anti-phenomenon that can be created by electricity. Now this gives him lots of buffs and attack options, like he can boost his speed to the next level by increasing the activity of electric signals in his brain. He can also create a thunderous roar that blasts Sukuna with a sonic wave, or shoot electric beams directly from his palms. But the craziest of all has got to be his ability to use X-Ray to tell us that Sukuna is basically aura farming after killing the mighty Gojo, aka the strongest sorcerer of today. Next at number 53, we have Amai's Sugar Manipulation. After which we'll discuss the 5 inherited techniques in Jujutsu Kaisen. Amai's curse technique is something that'll save America from diabetes, because this technique allows him to increase his own sugar level, which he can then transform into physical form. He can also provide sugar to the other people in case they're experiencing low blood sugar level. However, performing this technique reduces his sugar level immensely, and as a result, Amai feels lightheaded. Now let's talk about inherited techniques. Basically, they're the innate techniques that are passed down to sorcerers of the same bloodline. there's actually an advantage to inheriting a curse technique because you can get access to a manual on how to use it. So continuing from before, at number 54 we have 10 shadow techniques of the Zenin family. This technique allows the user to summon 10 different Shikigami using shadows as a medium. The very first Shikigami we have are divine dogs, which are given to the user when he inherits the 10 shadows technique. These dogs not only can tear apart their opponents, but also have insane tracking abilities, which lets them find lost allies and send signals to them. But that's not all these puppies can do. Since there are 2 of them, the black divine dog can inherit the power of the defeated white divine dog to become a werewolf, which not only increases its speed, but also makes it strong enough to damage a special grade cursed spirit. If the user wants to summon more Shikigami, then he also has to go through a ritual where he must defeat that Shikigami. At number 2 we have Nue, a winged Shikigami that has heavy electric shock wings. These wings not only allow Nue to carry its master, but can also give an electrical shock to its opponents. Along with that, Nue can also use his heavy wings to defend his master. At number 3 we have Max Elephant. This Shikigami can shoot huge amounts of water from its trunk. Along with that, it can also use its weight to crush its opponent. At number 4 we have Great Serpent, a snake Shikigami which can quickly immobilize its target with its large mouth and strong body. The 5th Shikigami on the list is Toad. It's a large frog Shikigami that has a long tongue which it uses to throw and slam its opponents into objects. Moreover, since this frog is large, it can also carry injured humans or allies in its mouth. Next, at number 6, we have Rabbit Escape that summons a very large number of rabbits. Now, I know rabbits are cute, but they're also very annoying, especially when there are lots of them, and that is exactly what this summon does. It fills the area to distract the opponent, allowing its summoner to escape the danger. The next 2 Shikigami are spoilers. At number 7, we have Round Deer, a large deer Shikigami that can heal by using the reverse curse technique. Its positive energy is so powerful that it caused Yorotsu to lose control of her liquid metal by neutralizing her cursed energy. At number 8, we have Piercing Ox, that charges with immense strength, but only in a straight line. And that's a good thing, because the longer it charges, the more powerful its attack will be. This ox packs so much power that it was able to go against Yorotsu's insect armor, the very thing that is known for its immense durability. At number 9, we have Divine General Mahoraga, which is the most powerful Shikigami that can be summoned using 10 shadows. It's so powerful that no one in the Zenin clan was ever able to exercise it. Why? Because of 2 reasons. First is the Sword of Extermination that is coated in positive energy. This right there makes it a natural enemy to cursed spirits. The second and the most important reason is Mahoraga's ability to adapt to any technique. Yes, this monster here is the very being that adapted to dismantle, which is something that no one has ever pulled off. Spoiler alert, at number 10 we have Tiger Funeral, but we literally know nothing about this Shikigami, but we do know what happens when Nue inherits the power of Tiger Funeral, Great Serpent, and Round Deer. It becomes powerful enough to give Gojo a tough time. Cursed Beast Agito is not only capable of producing electricity like Nue, but it can also regenerate with reverse curse technique. Along with that, both Nue and So can also be combined into one Shikigami summon. Megumi can do so by using extension technique, the Wells Unknown Abyss, which gives the Toads a pair of wings. This is basically a 2-in-1 deal of Nue's and Toad's power, as it can fly and capture anyone with its tongue. However, unlike their original form, these Toads are relatively weaker and can be destroyed without any drawback. Now let's move on to number 55, where we have Projection Sorcery of Zenin family. Yes, the Zenin family has 2 inherited techniques, but unlike the first one, which can be called the main technique, Projection Sorcery was only used by Naobito Zenin and later inherited by his son Naoya Zenin. This technique is a bit tricky. It divides 1 second into 24 frames and allows Naobito to basically plan out how he wants to move during those 24 frames. Then, just like he planned, Naobito does all those movements in 1 second. To others, it looks like Naobito is moving unnaturally fast, so fast that even a special grade cursed spirit can't follow what he's doing. Now the fun part. If Naobito touches anyone while the projection sorcery is active, then that target also has to follow the same pattern Naobito planned. Otherwise, the target gets stuck in that frame for 1 whole second. Moreover, if Naobito hits the target in that frame, it'll break the target out of that stuck frame and will cause critical damage to them. This rule also applies to Naobito. Along with that, once Nobito has planned a movement pattern, he cannot change it at all. Nobito also has to strictly stick to the laws of physics, because if he doesn't do that, he'll get stuck just like his target. Now let's move on to the family that Zenins hate the most. Yup, at number 56 we have Limitless of Gojo family. Many people use big words to explain this technique, but you, my dear viewer, need to understand 4 things: infinity, attract, and repel, and mixture of both. First is infinity. It is the base state of Limitless, and it has the power to stop anything. It creates an infinite space between Gojo and anything that approaches him. So if you punch Gojo, your punch will never reach him because there is an infinite distance between Gojo and you. This infinity can only be deactivated by the user. However, you can either bypass it with a domain or use a special grade curse tool that can cancel any curse technique, like Toji did in his fight with Gojo. The second technique is blue, and what it does is it attracts. With this technique, Gojo can create an infinite vacuum or void that acts like a mini black hole. This either surrounds him or can be created away from Gojo in the form of a blue ball. After that, it creates a very powerful force that attracts everything around it towards that vacuum. At a mild output, this thing can attract 2 targets across long distances, which Gojo usually uses to get closer to his opponents. It can also tear through buildings in literal moments, and at maximum cursed energy output, the pulling force of this technique can literally clear out the entire area. At number 3, we have reversal of this technique, red, and it repels. This technique creates a bright red orb that generates a massive pushing force. The user fires it away from themselves to create a shockwave that blasts away everything in sight. Finally, we have the extension of Limitless technique, Hollow technique, purple. This technique is a mixture of blue and red, the result of which is an imaginary mass. The user then launches that mass towards their target, which deals so much damage that red and blue cannot even compare to it. A blast of purple can destroy an entire city, blow through an entire section of a forest, or completely delete body parts of their enemy. And if the user is not careful, while activating the technique, it can even damage them. Blood manipulation of the Kamo family. Blood manipulation allows the user to control their own blood, inside and outside their own body, down to the very cells. It lets the user change everything about the blood, its thickness, the plasma, the red blood cells, everything. And it's not just limited to blood. Anything that touches the user's blood can also be controlled easily. This technique is very deadly against cursed spirits because the blood of a blood manipulation user is poisonous to cursed spirits. Because the whole fighting style revolves around using blood, the user can die of blood loss. So to make sure that doesn't happen, the users dip the weapons in their blood and carry several blood bags with them. The user can even do doping by using the extension of blood manipulation, flowing red scale. It allows the user to increase their temperature, pulse rate, and number of red blood cells to greatly increase their physical capabilities. Choso, who can use this technique because he was created by the blood of the Kamo family, can take this doping one step further. By using this technique with maximum cursed energy output, Choso was able to match Yuji's monstrous strength. Along with doping, Noritoshi can also use Crimson Bonding, which lets him control his blood into a shape of a net that can tightly capture his target. The user can also use Convergence, which lets them compress their blood so much that it becomes a small orb. This can then be used to perform Piercing Blood, which is another extension technique that lets the user shoot the compressed blood in a very thin line. And if the blood is strengthened with cursed energy, Piercing Blood can even reach the speed of sound, making it strong enough to go straight through human flesh. But if firing the blood in a straight line doesn't work, then how about a shotgun? Because Supernova, the technique Choso created himself, lets you do just that. To use this, Choso uses Convergence to create small orbs of blood and shoot them out in different directions like a shotgun. And if you're from London and are fond of knives, then you'd like Choso's Blood Edge, as it lets him shape his blood into a dagger. However, the blood is not solid in this case. Rather, Choso rotates it at very high speeds to make the dagger more deadly. However, if you're into meteorites, then Choso's got you covered there as well. Okay, I know it's not a real meteorite, but Blood Meteorite lets Choso harden some of his blood, which he can then throw at his opponent. Now, it's not as powerful as Piercing Blood, but it will go straight through your liver. Now for the last technique, we have Cursed Speech of Inumaki family at number 58. Unlike previous inherited techniques, this technique is very simple. Basically, if Inumaki tells you to sit down, you sit down. What happens is Inumaki strengthens his words with cursed energy, which when spoken, forces the target to do whatever Inumaki orders them. Inumaki can command them to do anything, to sleep, to stop, to run away, to explode, and to even die. No, that's not a joke. Inumaki can literally kill his target by telling them to die. But there's a catch. The stronger the command, the more demanding it is on Inumaki's throat. And if the command is stronger than Inumaki's skill level, then it'll cause Inumaki to cough up blood, or worse, lose his speech. To use this technique, the user must have the markings known as the snake eyes and fangs on their cheeks and tongue, or they must use a cursed tool that has those markings on it. Inumaki can also record his words and to activate his command whenever the recording is played. However, Inumaki will still get the backlash for giving a strong command. Phew, that was the last curse technique in Jujutsu Kaisen. Let us know which one was your favorite in the comments down below.